Welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast with your host, Chris Anderson. In this show, Chris and his guests will share their knowledge and experience on how to go from zero to successful entrepreneur. They have built their businesses from scratch and are now ready to give back to those who are just starting. Let's get ready to learn, grow, and elevate our businesses. And now, your host, Chris Anderson.
Welcome back to another recording of the Elevate Media Podcast. I am Chris Anderson, your host, and today we're going to get into a really important topic. You know, I say that with a lot of our recordings, but this one is true to that as well. It's about cultivating a success mindset, because mindset's super important to have if you're starting out your business, if you're early on in your business and you're trying to get to the next level, because things are going to go wrong, things are going to go good, and having just that success mindset is going to really lead you through a lot of things. And so we brought in an expert to talk just on that, HR Huntsman. He's going to dive into it. He has loads of expertise. We could have a whole episode on what he's done, who he's helped, and how he's done it. But we're gonna save that for you to do a little bit of your own research going forward. And we want to dive into this topic. So, HR, welcome to the Elevate Media Podcast.
Chris, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So, excited to dive into this. You know, tell me why, for you, the cultivation of a success mindset is so important.
Yeah. Let's back up a second. Calling me an expert is a bit of a stretch. The way that I've developed this, and I work with business leaders every day of my life, came out of my childhood, which was really dysfunctional and painful. And I grew up in an alcoholic, abusive, angry home. And early on, what I began to realize, Chris, and this is going to begin to answer your question on mindset, is I realized that if I was going to climb my way out of this deal, it was going to have to be because I chose to do so. I was going to have to decide. Now, I'm near 60. I'm looking back and adding verbiage I could not have, spoken to when I was a kid or a teenager. But I began to realize that my only way forward to any kind of healthy life was going to be to think my way out of this and change the patterns and behaviors that were being handed to me and create some new things. And my brothers, for whatever reason, weren't able to do it. They continued down the path of addiction and pain and abuse. And 2 of my 3 younger brothers are deceased because of their lifestyle choices. And I just made up my mind, and that's a key phrase there. I made up my mind that I was going to do something different. I didn't know exactly what that was. I just knew I didn't want what I had. And so that began the journey to what I get to do now, working with business leaders all around the nation. Ran a counseling center for 25 years with my nonprofit. So I've had a lot of understanding and impact and watching people who just decided not to change their mind. So for all of us here listening today, the decision to change your mind about who you are and where you're going and what you're doing is key and critical component to this.
Yeah, and I think it is true. So why is it sometimes so hard to change our mind? You talk about the addiction and how it can wreak havoc. Why didn't they just change their mind? Is there something that is missing, or was it just, uneducated on being able to change your mind? What do you see in regards to that?
Honestly, Chris, if I could answer the deepest level of that question, I mean, we would change the world forever, right? How do some people able to either flip a switch or fight their way out or decide to quit smoking or improve their marriage and some people don't? Gosh, I wish I had the deepest answer to that, but we can begin talking about the fact that you do have to get to some root issues. It's not just about the cigarette, right? It's not just about the grind or the hustle, or I'm just going to start a business. We have to understand motivations of why. We have to wrestle with dark drivers of imposter syndrome or insecurity. And it's not, why am I drinking? It's not that I'm drinking. It's why am I drinking? Like, what am I covering up?
Yep.
And so all those kinds of questions around mindset, it's not that I'm gambling. It's why am I gambling? What am I attempting to fix or solve or escape?
Yeah.
when it comes to those, negative behaviors, those are the kinds of questions we need to really have the guts to wrestle with. And a lot of people don't have the guts to wrestle with that deeper stuff.
Yeah, it's true. And so before I started a business, I was an athletic trainer. And so in that industry, we'd see a lot of things where there'd be an injury or something would happen, and we would just go immediately to ice because that's what we had, been brought up for, right? Or X, Y, Z. But it got to the point where I was like, why? Why are we doing that? Does that actually solve the problem? Or maybe they had a reoccurring chronic thing that just happens over and over and over. And it was just basically we're just band-aiding the pain and trying to help them get through. But, finally shifting that is like, what is the issue? Same with pharmaceuticals, same with medical. Like, what is the underlying problem, right? The root cause, like you mentioned, of the physical ailments, mental ailments, emotional, spiritual. We all have different things that we drag along.
That's right.
So what is the root cause? And I love that because I think a lot of times, especially with social media, we only see the superficial facade, and we share that, a lot of times only on social media. So like, what are those root issues that we can start healing and overcoming and coming through to improve and put our mindset in a better perspective?
For sure. And then, we can switch that conversation and talk about entrepreneurship or business leadership. And some of those same principles apply. I'm talking to these CEOs or entrepreneurs, or why do you want to run a small business?
Yep.
What's the driver there? Is it just because you think the glitz and the glamour of owning your business? And well, there's a lot of freaking hard work, and you're going to beat your head against a wall and deal with the transitioning labor market and interest rates and economy and recession. And you better figure out quickly why you want to do this and make that something pretty noble and powerful, or you're going to be in for a lot of pain.
And that's, I think, again, why I think this conversation will be so important, because a lot of people listening to this are, thinking about starting their own business, or they've got a side hustle they're trying to get to go full time. And the mindset, we have to have is so important. And, obviously once you can figure out those root issues and you start taking the steps to grow through that helps some, but we still have to cultivate that, right? We still have to create that success mindset. So let's talk hypothetically. Someone listening to this say, I know these are my roots. I know this is why I do this and why I act this way. I'm working on those.
Sure.
What can they do also in the same time frame to start to build and cultivate a more successful mindset? And I guess first, what does a successful mindset look like?
You love listening to podcasts, but have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Maybe you want to build a brand, grow your business, or are looking for an excuse to talk about your favorite hobby. Whatever your reason for making a podcast, Buzzsprout is the place to start. Since 2009, Buzzsprout has helped over 300,000 people launch their own podcasts. Buzzsprout walks you step by step through the whole process and will give you powerful tools to start, grow, and monetize your podcast. Ready to get started? Click the link in the show notes to get our free step-by-step guide to starting your podcast today.
A successful mindset is going to be one that is marked by resiliency and grit and an ability to overcome challenges and setbacks while consistently putting one foot in front of the other towards whatever that goal is. And Chris, that's why having that goal is so important. I do this particular talk. I've climbed mountains. I've done Rainier 8 times and Kilimanjaro. And so I developed a talk around how mountain climbing is like building a business. You could say building a life. And one of my key points is climb with the summit in mind. So when you're high up on the slopes of a Rainier or Kilimanjaro, there are times you don't want to take that next step.
Yeah.
And if that's all you thought about was that next step, Chris, you'd stop. Mm-hmm. But if you have a picture of the summit in mind and what that looks like, that can help propel you. So you talked about this success mindset. You have to start with whatever your summit is. And that's, again, getting back to the why. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but the entrepreneurs that I know that are successful are the ones that have a clear picture of a preferred future out there. And so today's steps, hard or easy, are in that direction. So when this hard step comes, I have to face my imposter syndrome. I have to deal with a bank loan going sour, or key employees are leaving, or there's turnover in the marketplace, or whatever it is, and you get punched in the face. Having that resiliency and that determination to say, in spite of this, I'm taking my next step toward that dream in the future.
Yeah. And I think that's crucial. You're a mountain climber, hiking up those. And I kind of made that reference. I've never done that. But what I've done is marathon running. So I always do that picture of like, hey, you got to think about the end. Like, think about crossing that finish line. Think about that feeling you're going to have accomplishing that, if it's your first time or if it's your 10th time. Like that adrenaline at the end, you always have a little bit more. And so like when you start to cramp, when you start to, shave, when you just start to say, this is a stupid idea, like remember where you were headed and why. And, take that, and it helps take that next step. Because it's not easy. It's not going to be easy, but it's not easy. Understand and know and have that desire within you to get to that destination for the reason that you have in your mind, I think you're going to see that you can overcome a lot more than you think in the moment.
Yeah. So I believe grit is at or near the core of an overcoming mindset or success mindset. Grit or resiliency, whatever word you want to use, is right there. That determination, that the understanding, I'm going to face setbacks. I'm going to get kicked in the gut. It's going to happen. To all of your listeners that are entrepreneurs or business startups, there's going to be days where you get sucker punched by one thing or another. And to determine right now, when that happens, you're going to pick yourself up off the mat and try something new. So that's going to be the second part, is the ability to pivot, to be flexible, to in the pursuit of that finish line. We'll use your metaphor. In the pursuit of that finish line, my course may vary more than I thought. It may change. Now, the marathon course doesn't change, but the course to that particular finish line as an entrepreneur, it's going to change. It's going to be different than you thought, and you're gonna have to be a different person than you thought. So the willingness to learn and grow. So if you combine those two things, a gritty resiliency mindset with a dedication to open-minded growth, those two things are what I found both in my own life and all the successful leaders that I work with.
Yeah. And it's so true because, the marathon, the path is set out. Like you're going to get there. It's not, I don't know any marathons that are just straight lines. And so you're going to have to take turns. You got to move over for someone who's in front of you going slow or stopping and jumping over potholes or avoiding potholes. You're going to have to walk sometimes probably when you didn't think you were going to have to, because whatever comes up, you cramp up. So you're going to have to at least walk. Like, so the means of you finishing that race might look different. You're like, I'm going to run the whole thing. I'm going to get there, PR best time.
Right.
Sometimes it just doesn't happen because of things outside of your control for the most part. That's how you respond to it. Are you just going to quit, give up, and go home? Or are you going to just keep moving forward? I've had every muscle in my leg start cramping up with 10 miles left in the race. I'm like, well, this is going to be fun. And so, you just have to adapt. Like you said, you have to be able to pivot and shift a little bit. I had to stretch more. I had to stop and walk more, but I was going to finish, by whatever pain it was. And, that's part of it, and then, once you achieve that goal, okay, what's the next one? And how are we going to do it? And how can we do it better? And kind of going back of having that vision of like where you wanted to go or what you wanted to accomplish. We had a guest on not too long ago who wrote a book, The 7 Secrets of the Sultan, or The Sultan's 7 Secrets. Sorry, Jeff, I butchered that title. But it was all about like in this, depending on what you think or what I like, visualization, like feeling, like seeing where you're wanting to go and having the feelings, like feeling the emotional tie to it of, the success or the ability to help someone, like just what that like wells up inside you, and actually feeling that in the moments of those visualization type things can help you as you're going along, and getting those tight spots. You can recreate that feeling. And when you create those feelings, it can really shift your perspective, even in those hard moments. I don't know if you're, what your thoughts are on having that feeling tied with the vision in the moment, like all together.
Oh, I 100% believe that. In fact, there's all kinds of psychological studies that prove this to be true. When they study the brain about someone encountering something physically, and then they'll have them hooked up to an EKG machine or an EEG machine, and they'll think about that, it's almost the exact same brainwave pattern. So, the feelings that we have when we encounter the thing, when we reach the summit or cross the finish line, and then you're lying in bed later that week thinking about it, it's almost exactly the same. That's why visualization works so well with athletes, right? And dancers. And absolutely, I have many of my clients do this, meaning I will have them write out, speak out, talk about what that's going to feel like, why they want that. They want that vacation home in Mexico. Tell me why. Explain to me what that's going to feel like. I'll have them say, what are you doing when you're successful? Not tell me what success is. What are you doing when you feel successful? I play with my grandkids. I'm drinking a Mai Tai. I'm surfing in Hawaii. Tell me about that. Yeah. So linking that finish line or that alpine summit to the rigorous behavior of entrepreneurship helps move them forward. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. And like you can be from whatever, wherever in life, believe in whatever you want to believe. I think it is true. What we think about, comes about. You can either think about the positive and have those positive feelings, or you can have the opposite, and it'll take you that way. I think because it changes how we respond to things, which changes our actions, which changes, the response of, the other person or the environment you're in. So I think it's such a crucial part in creating that success, and whatever that looks like is different for people. But, so what are some things besides that people can do to strengthen that successful mindset, to continue to, because the storms are coming, right? You're not going to miss them. You're going to get hit. So what can we do, to strengthen that mindset of having success?
So one of the things that I learned and that I teach is the Stockdale paradox. Have you heard of the Stockdale paradox?
I'm not real familiar. I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar. Yeah.
So James Stockdale, he was the highest ranking prisoner of war in Vietnam and was there at the Hanoi Hilton for a while. I believe he was an admiral. And he developed this train of thinking that helped him not only survive the, being a POW, but later he went on to write books and give lectures. And I found this to be true in my own life, and I share his story along with this principle. And it's this combination of being ruthless with the difficulty and challenge in front of you. You face that difficulty. When he was asked who doesn't make it, it's the optimists, he said. The optimists are the ones that did not make it. And so what I want your listeners to understand when we're talking about this positive mindset, there is this thing called toxic positivity, this positivity that is not undergirded by a resiliency, by a dedication to face the hard challenges. And I want your listeners to understand, but by just saying, today is going to be a great day and everything's going to be good, and that's not going to be helpful for you. That's not going to gird up and give you that muscularity to deal with the difficulties that come with starting and running a small business. So this paradox, this understanding that things are tough, they're challenging. And then he said, this is my favorite thing. He said, but this is going to be the defining moment of my life. So that combination, Chris, of facing the hard issues head on, eyes wide open, figuring out how to solve this problem, fix the labor shortage, whatever it is, change your leadership, get over your imposter syndrome, read more books, while also saying this challenge right here is going to make me stronger. Mm-hmm. It's not happening to me. It's happening for me.
Yep.
Figure out what the for is. That's a key right there, to figure out what the for is. Because the minute you become a victim of your problems, you're done.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a great reminder. So thank you for bringing that up is, that toxic positivity is just as bad, not having an acceptable mindset at all. And so, yeah, the perspective of how you take it on the chin, right? Like, because things just happen, things that are unfortunate, things that are bad, and those are real. That's all real. Like, things suck sometimes. That's okay. But
That's right.
What is this doing for me? Like, how is this helping me grow? What door is this open? What, time is it giving you back? Like, if you lose a client or something like that, what is the negative actually going to be a positive? What could it be? And so being aware and being open to that opportunity, because a lot of times, at least what I've seen is when those bad things happen, we go, oh, this is bad. And we focus on the bad instead of when we get switched, like you said, what is this working for me? Like, what is this going to be doing for me when we change and we look for something that is coming from that moment? Then we don't miss the opportunity that's there.
That's right.
We don't miss the learning lesson. We don't miss, the connection with someone new. We're looking out for something instead of just dwelling and focusing on the unfortunate circumstance itself.
Yeah. And let's make a behavior out of this and not just a hypothetical.
Yeah.
When I work with my clients on these things right here, I will take these moments and I will ask them to actually write narratives, write stories about what they're going to learn from this. So they're going to be speaking from the future back to the now, and they're going to be telling me how this is making them better. So it's not just this is happening for me. I want you to describe and paint me a picture of the better future of you, the better version of you because of this thing. Now, let's be real.
Yeah.
Let's be real. None of us likes being kicked in the gut. None of us likes it. So I don't want any of your, listeners to think, oh, he got punched in the face and he said, yay, this is happening for me.
Yeah.
No, there's going to be a reaction time of, holy crap, I didn't see that coming. Man, that hurt. Holy moly. My eyes are open. My nose is bloody. Losing that client, whatever it is. It's after that initial reaction piece. Now is where the mindset thing comes in. So we're all going to take a step back. Eyes are watering. Nose is bloody. Once we take the step back, Chris, it's at that point. At that point is where the success mindset people differentiate from the victim mindset people.
Yeah.
At that point, they've both gone through the same thing. The success mindset person now says, okay, what's the lesson I'm taking from this? And again, I have my clients actually write it out. What I learned is to approach that differently. Now, going forward, I'm going to do this. And what it brought up in me is I'm not as patient as I could be, or I can communicate better, or whatever it is. Here's what I own. That's a huge key to a success mindset is here's what I'm accountable for in that whole thing. The victim mindset people, they blame everybody else.
Right.
Success mindset people, what I own is a lot of that. And write it down, how you're going to get better. Incredibly powerful.
Yeah. I think that's huge and very powerful. And it kind of reminds me like when you get punched in the chin, it's not like, oh yeah, that's great, awesome. Like, some crazy fetish with it or whatever. But like, it reminds me like, the movie Rocky or like even Avengers Endgame with Captain America. They both get, just throttled at times and they're both on the ground, just laying there. Right. They didn't immediately hop back in and say, oh yeah, I can do this all day. Although he does sometimes say that. But like whether it truly can be, it's a moment, right? They're down for a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's either a reflection or there's, a thought, or there's just that pause of, okay, this just happened.
Right.
I'm getting bombarded here.
Right.
What am I going to do next? Am I just going to lay here and it be done? But in both of those situations, they get back up.
Yeah.
And it's not even always a hop back up. It's a struggle and it's a painful get back up, but they get back up and they go at it again.
Right.
No matter what the outcome might be, it might not get better, but they still get back up.
Right.
And they're not playing that victim kind of mindset.
I like that you referred to the Rocky movies there. It's interesting. I think one of the things that resonates so deeply with the Rocky movies is how he really writes in there the wrestling with the fear of failure. In each of the Rocky movies, he's really challenged with the imposter syndrome. Do I belong? Can I fight an Apollo Creed or a Mr. T, Clubber Lang?
Yeah.
And he admits, I'm afraid. What do you want me to say? I'm afraid.
Yeah.
The realization of having the guts to say that out loud is just powerful. Facing, building a business or facing these challenges and dealing with some of those fears and insecurities is a powerful step.
Yeah, it's huge. And I think that's why it's so important, because I hear a lot of people, just be positive, just be positive. It's like, well, I mean, you can have your moment of not positive, right? Allow it to be a real thing. But something I found, at least, and I've grown and learned along the way, is, how quick can I rebound from it? Do I let it just continually drag me for days and days and days, basically having that victim mindset? Or do I accept it? Okay, this is what happened. This sucks. This hurts. This is unfortunate. It's not ideal. Okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to learn? And what's that gap, right? The moment of impact to when you're back in it. And I think it can look different for the situation, for the person, as long as you don't let it continually just drag you through the mud.
Right. I have a great story for this. I was at a conference, and this lady was up on stage being interviewed, and it turns out she was the first combat aviator for the Marine Corps. Wow. So now a retired lieutenant colonel at this time, but the first combat, so she flew in one of the Gulf Wars, and so fascinating interview on stage. And she comes off stage, and we have a break, and I went up to her. I'm an Air Force veteran. She's a Marine veteran. And I walk up to her, and I just ask her a few questions, what it's like to be a fighter pilot. And then I asked just one of the dumbest questions ever. I said, so when you're flying into combat, were you afraid? And she says, oh, H, I was terrified. Absolutely, I was afraid. And she said, sometimes I got so afraid that I wet my pants. And we just laughed. And I said, well, what'd you do then? Chris, listen to this. She said, I flew into combat with wet pants. I'm like, that is the greatest metaphor ever.
Yep.
The business owners and entrepreneurs, we all face fear.
Yeah.
Fear of failure, that's the biggest one, I guess.
Yeah.
And those that are willing to fly into combat with wet pants, man, those are the ones that win the day.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's awesome.
Isn't that just the greatest story?
It's so true, though, too. Sometimes, you're just going to deal with it and you're going to move forward.
Yeah.
That's so good.
As opposed to the ones who don't want to acknowledge that they're afraid.
Yeah.
That toxic positivity, everything's good. We're going to crush the market. We're going to blow up. We're going to 5X. We're going to stop. Just stop.
Yeah. Or at least you like that. Be like, hey, we didn't actually hit it. That sucks, but and continue to try to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Have the transparency and the realism. It's sometimes it's hard, right? Because all you see on social media from people is their highlight reels constantly.
That's right.
And I think hopefully we're starting to lean a little bit more to the transparency with small businesses because of that, because we're just tired of just seeing perfection, quote unquote perfection.
Right.
But H, this has been a fantastic conversation. I think just so much that people listening can start to think about, implement, and change so they can have and build that success mindset. And so, I've really appreciated your time today and sharing this. If people want to connect with you more, find out more about you, what you do, where would be the best place for them to do that?
Sure. You can always go to our website, yourleadersedge.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. The easiest way, I'm an old-fashioned dude. I'm old school. Just email me, hr@yourleadersedge.com, and I'd be happy to chat with you.
Awesome. Yeah. So everyone, make sure you get connected with him. Just continue to learn and grow and see what happens. But H, again, thanks so much for being on the Elevate Media Podcast today.
Chris, I appreciate the invitation. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you for listening to the Elevate Media Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. See you in the next episode.